Today we'll dive into 5 real stories of the most disturbing disappearances on the Appalachian Trail. These cases involve experienced hikers who suddenly disappeared. We'll explore the details of their journeys, the investigations, and the chilling questions that remain. Stay tuned as we uncover the mysteries behind these unsettling disappearances on one of America's most famous trails. It was about 6:30 a.m. on July 22, 2013, when 66-year-old Geraldine Largay, known as Jerry to her friends, set off from the Poplar Ridge lean-to in western Maine. She was on the Appalachian Trail, a long and challenging hike that stretches over 2,000 miles from Georgia to Maine. Jerry, a retired Air Force nurse from Brentwood, Tennessee, was attempting a through hike, a trek of the entire trail in one continuous journey. Jerry had always been known for her spirit and determination. However, Jerry had some challenges. She had a poor sense of direction and suffered from panic attacks. She was also afraid of the dark and of being alone. But none of these fears had stopped her from pursuing her dream of hiking the Appalachian Trail. Jerry started her journey on April 23, 2013, accompanied by her friend Jane Lee. The plan was to hike together, meeting Jerry's husband George at various points along the trail where he would resupply them. However, on June 30th, Jane had to leave the trail due to a family emergency. Despite Jane's concerns about Jerry's ability to navigate the trail alone, Jerry decided to continue solo. On the morning of July 22nd, Jerry was photographed by a fellow hiker named Dottie Rust. This photograph, taken near a log lean-to, would be the last known image of Jerry alive. She planned to hike to the Spalding lean-to, about 8 miles away, and then continue to the Route 27 crossing where George would be waiting. As she hiked, Jerry left the trail to relieve herself. This seemingly routine detour led to a series of unfortunate events. After stepping off the trail, Jerry became disoriented and lost her way. At around 11:01 a.m., she attempted to text George. "In some trouble. Got off trail to go to BR, now lost. Can you call AMC to see if a trail maintainer can help me? Somewhere north of Woods Road, XOX." Unfortunately, due to poor or non-existent cell service, the message never sent. Jerry continued to try and find her way back to the trail. She moved to higher ground, hoping for a better signal to send her distress messages. She attempted to send the text 10 more times within an hour and a half, all to no avail. On July 23rd, Jerry tried to send another message at 4:18 p.m. "Lost since yesterday, off trail 3 or 4 miles. Call police for what to do, PLS XOX." Again, the message failed to send. Over the next several days, she continued to send texts, each one a plea for help that never reached its intended recipient. Meanwhile, George grew increasingly worried. By July 24th, he reported Jerry overdue, prompting one of the largest and most extensive search operations in the history of the Maine Warden Service. The search involved wardens, state police, national park rangers, fire departments, search aircraft, and K-9 teams. Despite their efforts, heavy rains obscured any tracks, and Jerry's whereabouts remained a mystery. Jerry's situation was dire. She had some supplies, a tent, mylar blanket, rain gear, a small amount of food and water, but these would only last so long. She set up camp in a dense part of the forest near the border of U.S. Navy property, an area used for survival training and not easily accessible. She tried to make herself visible by setting small fires, but the dense canopy above her campsite obscured her location from aerial searches. In her journal, Jerry documented her struggle. On August 6th, she wrote a heartbreaking plea. "When you find my body, please call my husband George and my daughter Carrie. It will be the greatest kindness for them to know that I am dead and where you found me, no matter how many years from now. Please find it in your heart to mail the contents of this bag to one of them." Despite her desperate situation, she continued to write in her journal, with entries recorded until August 18th, nearly a month after she went missing. The search efforts continued, with searchers coming within 100 yards of her campsite at one point, but the dense forest and Jerry's hidden location prevented them from finding her. Eventually, the official search was scaled back, though the Warden Service and other volunteers continued to pursue leads and tips. On October 14, 2015, more than 2 years after Jerry went missing, a forester working for the U.S. Navy stumbled upon her campsite. The forester found a flattened tent, a green backpack, and a human skull with a sleeping bag around it. Lieutenant Kevin Adam, one of the key figures in the search efforts, arrived at the scene and was almost certain the remains were Jerry's. The campsite, located less than 2 miles from the Appalachian Trail, was difficult to see unless you were right next to it. Jerry had constructed a bedding area out of small trees, pine needles, and possibly some dirt to keep her tent dry. She had also tied a space blanket between branches to provide some cover. Nearby trees showed signs of human-made fire attempts. The Warden Service later confirmed that the remains were indeed Jerry's. A medical examiner ruled that she had died from exposure and lack of food. Her supplies had dwindled, and despite her efforts to signal for help, she remained unseen and unheard in the dense forest. It was July 23, 2019, when Jeffrey Aylward, a 63-year-old retired firefighter from Plymouth, Massachusetts, sent his family a text message. He was hiking the Appalachian Trail from New Hampshire to Mount Katahdin. In the message, he said he should be coming out in about 4 hours on Route 17 near Rangeley, Maine. That was the last time anyone heard from him. Jeffrey, known on the trail as Dusty Pilgrim, was an experienced hiker. He had been walking the 180-mile trail from Georgia to Maine in section since 2015. He started this final leg on July 1st, determined to finish his longtime goal. His family had a system. They resupplied him every 8 days. But as days turned into weeks with no word from him, worry set in. Jeffrey was reported missing by his wife Ann and their son Nick on August 3rd. They hadn't heard from him for 13 days, and that was unusual even for Jeffrey, who was a diabetic and had a history of recent health issues. Despite his condition, Jeffrey loved the outdoors and saw the Appalachian Trail as a release from his years of military and fire service. His friend Sam Ducharme, who walked the first 400 miles of the trail with him in 2015, described Jeffrey as the Clint Eastwood of the trail. He was tall, had a squinty-eyed look, and had an imposing presence, but when he spoke, it was clear he was the nicest guy on the trail. The Maine Warden Service launched a search. They distributed information about Jeffrey to hikers along the trail, hoping someone had seen or spoken with him. Hikers reported seeing a lone tent about 50 yards off the trail near a popular scenic outlook called the Height of Land. On August 5th, a game warden named Kyle Hladek found Jeffrey's body inside that tent. It was a heartbreaking discovery for his family and friends. The tent was located about 0.2 of a mile west of Route 17, a place Jeffrey mentioned in his last message. The Maine Warden Service reported that Jeffrey had died due to a medical condition. They found no signs of foul play. His death certificate listed a condition that typically causes heart attacks and his diabetes as the primary causes of death. However, about 4 months later, another finding emerged. Acute and chronic alcoholism was noted as a contributing cause. This claim shocked Ann. Jeffrey had not drunk alcohol since his diabetes diagnosis roughly 15 years ago, and there was no alcohol found in his tent. The finding was based on an alcohol level of nearly 0.13, more than 61% over the legal limit to drive, found in blood taken from his chest cavity during the autopsy on August 6th. This reading was questioned by experts, including Toronto-based forensic toxicologist Jim Wigmore and Dr. Donald Jason, a former medical examiner in New Jersey. They concluded that the alcohol level was due to the natural process of decay, not actual alcohol consumption. Their conclusion was based on the amount of time that had passed between Jeffrey's death and the autopsy. By the time his body was found, he could have been dead for nearly 2 weeks. The process of putrefaction, or decay, is known to sometimes produce blood alcohol levels as high as 0.20. Furthermore, Jeffrey's diabetes would have made his blood more sugary, promoting alcohol formation after death. Despite this, the chief medical examiner, Dr. Mark Flomenbaum, stood by the original findings. Ann has been tirelessly working to have this finding removed. She believes it tarnishes Jeffrey's image and does not reflect the truth about his life and death. Jeffrey's death certificate lists his liver as normal, which experts say is inconsistent with someone who had acute and chronic alcoholism. The alcohol found in his blood was likely the result of post-mortem changes rather than actual alcohol consumption. Ann continues to fight to clear her husband's name. Jeffrey Aylward was a man of the outdoors, someone who loved nature and found comfort on the trail. His friend Ducharme remembered how Jeffrey spoke about his hometown of Plymouth with pride. Jeffrey retired from the Plymouth Fire Department as a lieutenant in 2014 after 29 years of service. He was also a veteran of the military. The trail name Dusty Pilgrim was a nod to his roots. Jeffrey and Ann had plans for the future. They wanted to sell their home and move to a cabin in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee once he completed the Appalachian Trail. But now, Anne cannot see herself going there without him. His family buried him in a military cemetery in Massachusetts, honoring his service and his life. Yet the fight to clear his name continues. It was a clear morning on July 9, 2023, when Robert Kirker, a 67-year-old experienced hiker from Rhinebeck, New York, was last seen at the inn at Long Trail in Killington, Vermont. Known by his trail name Steady Eddie, Kirker had been trekking the northern half of the Appalachian Trail since June 1st. The Appalachian Trail, a roughly 200-mile hike that stretches from Georgia to Maine, was Kirker's passion, and he dedicated much of his time to it. He had a ritual of checking in with his family every week, but this time the check-in never came. Kirker left the inn at Long Trail with plans to reach the Stony Brook shelter on the Appalachian Trail. The weather seemed promising initially, but soon the skies darkened as severe rain began to fall, leading to massive flooding throughout Vermont. The rain started on July 9th and continued to intensify, turning trails and streams into dangerous torrents. The Stony Brook, a usually manageable water crossing on the trail, became treacherous. On July 10th, Vermont experienced catastrophic flooding. Streams and rivers swelled, washing away bridges and flooding homes. The heavy rains turned the Stony Brook crossing into a dangerous challenge for any hiker. By July 14th, Kirker's family grew worried. He had not arrived at his hotel reservation at the Norwich Inn, and there had been no communication from him since he left Killington. They reported him overdue to the National Park Service, and the Vermont State Police were called in to assist with the search. The search efforts were extensive and involved multiple agencies, including the VSP Search and Rescue Team, Killington Search and Rescue, the Killington Police Department, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and New England K-9 Search and Rescue. They scoured the trails and waterways, focusing particularly on the areas affected by the recent floods. On July 28th, a significant lead emerged. A witness reported seeing Kirker at the Stony Brook shelter on the evening of July 9th. This was the last confirmed sighting of him. The witness described the severe weather and how the floodwaters had made the Stony Brook crossing extremely dangerous. With this information, search crews intensified their efforts around Stony Brook. Around 2:30 p.m. on July 28th, after hours of searching, a member of the Killington Search and Rescue Team found Kirker's body about 1.5 miles downstream from where the trail crossed the brook. The location was difficult to access, and the recovery required coordinated efforts. The discovery brought a somber closure to the search. An autopsy conducted by the Chief Medical Examiner's Office confirmed on August 1st that Kirker's death was due to drowning. The report stated that the manner of death was an accident, likely caused when Kirker was caught in the strong currents of the brook during the flood. Kirker was the second confirmed death in Vermont related to the severe flooding. The intense weather conditions had created a dangerous environment for everyone in the area, including seasoned hikers like Kirker. The Green Mountain Club, which maintains the trail in Vermont, expressed their condolences. The loss of Steady Eddie is felt throughout the trail community, said Mike DeBonis, the executive director of the club. Our heartfelt condolences go out to his family, friends, and hiking companions. It was about 2:30 p.m. on February 19, 2020, when Dawson County Fire Chief Danny Thompson announced the tragic end to a massive search operation. The body of Eddie Noon Onis Noonkester, a 60-year-old hiker from Eden, North Carolina, had been found near the Hike-In Trail in Amicalola Falls State Park, Georgia. Eddie had set off on a northbound hike along the Appalachian Trail just 5 days earlier, but what was meant to be an adventure of a lifetime ended in sorrow. Eddie Noonkester was remembered by his family and friends as a man who loved the outdoors. He didn't take life too seriously and always found joy in the world around him, whether sleeping under the stars or hiking long trails. His obituary painted a picture of a happy, carefree man, beloved by many for his loyalty and kindness. He was the kind of friend you could count on, even for the simplest tasks like moving furniture, and all he asked for in return was a good breakfast or a cold beer. On February 14, 2020, Eddie began his ambitious trip from the approach trail at Amicalola Falls State Park. He planned to hike the Appalachian Trail all the way to Maine. However, things took a turn for the worse just 2 days into his hike. On February 16th, a friend of Eddie's called 911 worried about Eddie's health. Minutes later, Eddie himself called 911 sounding confused and disoriented. He was unable to tell the dispatcher his location, which marked the beginning of a desperate search operation. Eddie's daughter, Kristen Pate, expressed her heartbreak in a Facebook post addressed to the hiking community, thanking everyone for their support and love during the difficult time. Eddie's family was devastated but took some comfort in knowing how much he was loved by his community. Authorities quickly mobilized a search for Eddie. The terrain where Eddie had gone missing was described as difficult, with high slopes and treacherous conditions worsened by heavy rain, lightning, and freezing temperatures. Over 130 searchers from multiple agencies worked tirelessly, facing these harsh conditions in hopes of finding Eddie alive. Their efforts were hindered by the severe weather, making the search even more challenging. On February 17th, staff at Lenfoot Hike Inn found some of Eddie's belongings near the Hike Inn Trail. This discovery renewed hope and intensified the search efforts. 6 K-9 teams were brought in to search a large grid area around the approach trail in Amicalola Falls State Park. The search continued through Monday night into Tuesday morning, despite deteriorating weather conditions. Danny Thompson, the fire chief in Dawson County, praised the searchers for their relentless efforts, acknowledging the tough terrain and severe weather they faced. On February 18th, the Georgia Emergency Management Agency joined the search, adding more resources to the already extensive operation. Volunteers from the community were also eager to help, demonstrating the strong sense of solidarity among hikers and locals. Despite these efforts, the situation looked grim. Eddie's family had shared with authorities that he had no known medical issues, but there were concerns about possible early-onset dementia. Over the last few months, family and friends had noticed signs that worried them, although Eddie had not been formally diagnosed. The search reached a tragic conclusion on February 19th, when Eddie's body was found. His brother Wesley, who had been actively involved in the search, thanked the searchers with tears in his eyes. "At the end of the day, our goal was to bring Eddie home, and we were able to do that," Wesley said. Despite his grief, Wesley took solace in knowing that Eddie was in a better place now. Authorities did not suspect foul play in Eddie's death, but the exact cause remained unknown. The body was taken to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab for an autopsy. Chief Thompson emphasized that Eddie's death did not appear suspicious, but the community was left with many questions. Eddie's passing was a heavy blow to his loved ones. He was remembered as a reliable and loyal friend, always ready to help others, even if it meant discomfort for himself. His visits to Goodwill were fondly recalled, and his humorous remarks about the bargains he found there left a lasting impression on those who knew him. It was early on October 4, 2019, when 56-year-old Michael Kaiser set off for a short hike along the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. Known for his love of hiking, Michael had planned a 2-day trip. He was an experienced hiker with no known medical or psychological issues, making the news of his disappearance all the more surprising to those who knew him. Michael Kaiser lived in Newportville, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He was a father of 4 and a well-known figure in the local hiking community. He often participated in hikes organized by the Allentown Hiking Club, where his experience and knowledge were respected. His family described him as a careful and methodical person, traits that made his sudden disappearance even more baffling. On that Friday morning, Michael drove his Ford F-150 to the trailhead in Lynn Township. His plan was to explore the area around Bear Rocks. Michael's family was accustomed to his hiking trips and trusted his expertise. They expected him to return by Sunday, October 6th. The hike started smoothly. On Saturday, October 5th, Michael sent his brother a photo from Bear Rocks. This communication reassured his family that he was safe and enjoying his hike. However, this would be the last time anyone heard from Michael. By Sunday, Michael's cell phone had stopped pinging, and there were no more updates. This silence was unusual and concerning. Michael's brother, worried by the lack of contact, tried calling and texting him repeatedly, but there was no response. By Tuesday, October 8th, with still no word from Michael, his brother decided to report him missing to the Bristol Township Police Department. The police immediately took action. Given Michael's last known location and the photo he had sent, the search was focused around Bear Rocks. Multiple Pennsylvania State Police barracks, including those from Bethlehem, Fogelsville, Frackville, and Laheyton, joined the effort. The National Park Service also helped. The search teams combed through the area looking for any signs of Michael. On Wednesday, October 9th, Authorities found Michael's Ford F-150 near Bake Oven Road, close to Bear Rocks. This discovery confirmed that Michael had indeed been in the area he had indicated in his last communication. The search teams intensified their efforts, scouring the trail and surrounding areas for any trace of the missing hiker. The following day, Thursday, October 10th, around 12:30 p.m., searchers made a grim discovery. Michael Kaiser's body was found at the bottom of a 30-foot embankment near Bear Rocks. The news was devastating to his family and the search teams who had hoped for a different outcome. The exact circumstances of Michael's death were unclear. The Pennsylvania State Police indicated that there was no danger to the public and that his death appeared to be an accident. It was unknown if Michael had fallen down the embankment or if a medical episode had led to his fall. No autopsy was performed, leaving some questions unanswered. The Allentown Hiking Club expressed their shock and sadness over Michael's death. They reiterated that he was an experienced hiker with no known health issues. Suzanne Goss, a spokesperson for the Kaiser family, released a statement thanking everyone who had participated in the search and shared information on social media. She emphasized that Michael loved the area where he had been hiking and that it was a place he cherished.